Hello everybody, this is Paul from Aquariums and Gardens. Hope you're doing great today. In the video I'm going to cover today, I'm going to show you the process and steps I take for growing cilantro in a hydroponic container. One of the reasons I grow hydroponic cilantro is because we have a ready access to cilantro in our household. We go through a lot of cilantro in our foods, Asian foods, Indian foods, Mexican foods, some of the Mediterranean, Middle Eastern foods. So fresh cilantro always goes great with those cuisines. So having cilantro on hand, fresh that you can cut at any time, goes great as compared to going to the store and buying a bunch of cilantro and then maybe use a little bit here and there, but then it sits in the fridge or it sits wherever, and then after a couple days, because it's been cut, it goes bad and you end up tossing it. So this is not a very expensive method to do it using hydroponic. What process I use is just a bucket. It's called the Kratky process, Kratky hydroponic. And the process I use is just a bucket. I use coconut coir as the growing medium. Coconut coir generally doesn't have any nutrients in it, so the nutrients primarily is coming from the hydroponic water. So the hydroponic cilantro that I grow is indoors. It grows in a grow tent. I've got a grow light in there. It just makes it easier. It's in a temperature controlled environment. Cilantro is one of those herbs that prefers cooler weather, too much sun, too much heat. They don't grow very well. But in my grow tent inside, which we'll go there later, it grows pretty well, and it lasts like 3-4 months before it's completely harvested, and then I just restart the process. So I'm going to be recording this video over a couple of days, couple of weeks, just to kind of show you the initial process and then show you how it grows. So before I hit publish on this video on YouTube, I'm going to take you through the initial steps here. A couple days later, as we see some green shoots popping up, I'll take some video then, and then closer towards the end. Well, the cilantro does grow pretty quick after its initial phase there. So I kind of leave it there for a while as we harvest it over time. And then the only thing I need to do during that period of time is just check the water levels, and then make sure there's enough water in the container, there's enough nutrients in the container. So with regards to nutrients I use this General Hydroponics Flora Grow, and that works great for what my purpose is here. And it's just a matter of they've got the directions on the back on how to they got the directions on the back on the quantity that you should be using per gallon. And these buckets right here, generally this is the bucket I'm using, just used, and so it's about a 5-gallon bucket. And then with that, normally I probably have no more than 3 gallons of water. One mistake I did make with this batch over here is, especially when the cilantro is fully grown, it goes through a lot of water. And so one time, I don't remember if I was on vacation or I just neglected it, but I let the water dry out. And so by that time, it actually stunted the growth. It kind of, went all haywire. I added water again, so there's a little bit of the life came back in the cilantro, but not like a previous batch I had. I mean, you need to keep the water going, make sure there's enough water in there. Initially, and I'll show you this later, you need to have enough water when it's the plants are small, but as they get bigger, their roots get down below, then you don't need the water all the way to the top, all the way to the base of the bucket over there, the base of the inner bucket. So, and then I use a cilantro from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds. Baker Creek, probably one of my go-to seed places. And the reason I use this particular one is it's called slow bolt. So that means it's gonna be slower to get to the point where it's flowering. Especially since we're just using the cilantro leaves for eating. You can use also cilantro seeds as well, either for replanting or you can grind them up and use them as an herb as well too, as a seasoning. But we just mainly use the leaves from the cilantro for our dishes. And so generally you don't want it to go to flower right away. You want it to stay longer time without flowering, and then that way you get a longer time when you can harvest your cilantro. So Baker Creek Seeds, cilantro, slow bolt. There's a lot of different varieties. There's a lot of different flavors as well too. I mean, cilantro, for some people cilantro is cilantro, but you know, with any fruit or vegetable, you have a lot of different varieties. And so this one works best. The taste, I think, is it tastes pretty well too, especially when you get fresh cilantro versus your dried cilantro. You know, a little bit goes a long way. If you like more, you can always add more. But that's the great thing about this. So this is one of the buckets that I've been using, and as you can see, there's an outer bucket that's the 5-gallon bucket. There's an inner net bucket, and so I use coconut coir in this, and then you can see there's an airline tubing in here. You don't have to use an airline tubing. You don't have to run an air pump. I do in mine. I think it grows a little better. It adds oxygen to the water, and that benefits the plant. So inside I've got an air pump there that I plug in, and then there's an air stone at the bottom of this. And so with that, then, you know, just make sure you're mixing in your solution. The nice thing about herbs is that you can, it's more forgiving when it comes to hydroponics. Other plants, your tomatoes, your cucumbers, whatnot, they're a little more sensitive. You got to be, you know, pretty accurate with the nutrients. With herbs like cilantro, you know, you can dial it in, and you can kind of see if you're underdoing it on the nutrients, it starts to turn yellow. If you're overdoing it on the nutrients, it'll start to burn, turn red. So it's, you know, it's not too hard to kind of, and it adjusts pretty well too. If, you know, if you're a little over, just add some more water, dilute it down. If you're a little under, just add a little more nutrients the next time around. So, especially when it's fully grown, as you can see, there's there's quite a bit of old growth in here that, you know, with this I'm going to clean out. The coconut coir is not really reusable. There are ways that people figure out to reuse it. It's easier for me just to buy a brand new coconut coir block, you know, and add new coconut coir and just throw this into the compost bin. So, you know, as it fills in, it goes through a lot of water, you know, and the nutrients as well too. But overall, it's, you know, in terms of, you know, buying cilantro from your store, I don't know what it costs over there, but, you know, you get a fresh flavor, and it's a overall time, you know, as long as you're maintaining this, keeping it full with water, it produces good result. This is not the only herb that you can use for hydroponic growing. You can also do with initially I started off with basil, but we don't use a lot of basil in our household, so it didn't really go well. So I only did that once, and now with cilantro we use a lot of cilantro. So then I grow that, but you can do it with cilantro, with basil, dill, mint, parsley, a couple of different herbs that you can actually do it with. And most of those herbs are, like I said, they're pretty forgiving, you know, in terms of it. If you're under or over on your nutrients, once you get on spot where they're supposed to be, you know, they'll start growing fine. So here's the as you can see, this is a net bucket. It goes inside this. You can buy it at any hydroponic store. Your online hydroponic store should have it too. Like I said, this is a 5-gallon bucket. Like I said, we go through a lot of cilantro, so I go for the larger bucket. They have smaller buckets, smaller net pots. You know, you can actually put in, there's some that you can put in multiple small net pots too. If you want to vary your herbs, you can do that too. And my preference is to use the coconut coir. It's easier. You can also use hydroton. I've not grown cilantro with hydroton, so I'm not sure how well that will go. I've done peppers outside. I've done outside hydroponic with jalapeno last year, and then I used hydroton for that, and that actually grew pretty well. I used a big barrel. I did not do it this year though. So like I said, here's the air pump. You can't necessarily see it, so actually you can see the bottom of it over here. It's buried in, these are roots and some of the leftover coconut coir in there. So you can kind of see the root structures. I mean, this is basically at the bottom. Plant's dead, so all the roots are kind of decayed away. But this one I'm going to, like I said, put it into the compost bin and then start a new batch. So this is what the air stone looks like. It's a large air stone. You don't necessarily need to use this size. This is what I found from my local hydroponic store. It works well. And I just drop it in the bottom of the bucket. So this is the bucket I'm going to be using. As you can see here, it's got actually a little smaller net inside. I think it's a little bit deeper, but it works just as well as the other one. The other one has wider, so you're using more coconut coir, and this one you're not using as much coconut coir in there. It's a close up of the net cup. Nothing fancy. And with this, I'm just going to drop the air stone at the bottom there. Later on, when we go inside, I will connect it to the air pump. And with this, I'm just doing it outside with my coconut coir, just because, you know, less mess, like that. Rather than dropping it on the floor in the basement, I can do it inside, do it outside over here. And so the coconut coirs I buy, usually I buy it in bulk. So they come in a shrink wrap pack, and they're usually dehydrated, so they're a solid block. And you need to add water, and then it'll expand over time. Like with this one over here, you can see the piece hasn't fully expanded, but the rest of it, I have some old coconut coir from previously, from the prior batch, and then some new one. So even if you put a chunk like this too, once the water is in the bucket, it's going to fill up. The coconut coir is going to expand. So it's just a simple process. Just start grabbing your coconut coir and just add it to your net cup. You don't want to overly compact the coconut coir into the net cup, because then the net cup is open, so you don't want to push all that coconut coir into the base. You just into the bottom of the bucket. You want it to stay at the top, and so if you compress it too much, you're going to lose a lot in there. And I like to fill it up close to the top of the net cup. Just kind of smooth it out. And that looks a little bit more. So I've got it filled up to where I want it to be. I'm going to take it indoors now. That's where I'll add the water, and then actually first I'll add the seeds, and then I'll add the water to the bucket, and then let's go inside, and then I'll show you how that process is done inside. So this is my grow tent setup. It's a pretty large tent, and I do have a couple of lights. I've got a large, I think it's a Mars Hydro full spectrum light, and then I've got a cob light over here. So usually you want to go get any of your indoor growing lights. You want full spectrum lights, so it kind of mimics the sun. As you can see, I have a timer on there, which I use for timing the lights. And the light wise for this, normally this light actually over here I use for my indoor when I'm doing seed start for the spring season. So if you look at one of my other videos, I've got a video on indoor seed starting, and this is the light I use for that. These are the tables where I set the plants. The cob is uses a little lower power, and then I can bring it down close. I built this DIY stand to raise and lower the cob light there, so it can be close to the planter when it needs to be, and then as they grow, then I'll raise it up. So I put it on a timer, probably about 10 hours a day. Does enough. You don't want to do any longer, or you don't want to do shorter. I do have a fan in here as well, because there is no airflow inside of this grow tent here. The fan kind of helps with that airflow, and the plants grow a little stronger with airflow. And then it also helps prevent any mold or humidity issues. You might see, I've seen in the past, you get the little white mold growing on the coconut coir. It's not a big deal. It doesn't cause any harm. If you do see other colors of mold, then you might have an issue. But the white mold, I've seen before. It doesn't do anything. It just grows on top of the coconut coir, and that's mainly a moisture issue, and that's kind of what the fan is supposed to help with too. The fan just blows the air across, kind of keeps it dry at the top. But if you do see it, it's not the end of the world. So I bought 3 packs of these seeds for my initial order. So far, I don't use the entire pack of seeds when I'm doing this, depending on how much you're growing. You know, you might not need it all. But basically, you just take it, you spread it across. You know, you don't need to use all of it. Just spread a bunch of seeds in and around, and then kind of mix them. Spread them out a little bit. And add a few more. So that should be good. And then what you want to do is you just want to get them covered with the coconut coir. If you still have extra coconut coir, you can use that, but just gently press them down into the coconut coir. Once they're decently covered, then you proceed to the watering step. So one thing with my setup over here is the fan runs continuously and the air pump runs continuously. The only thing on the timer are my lights, and mainly with it, if I'm just doing the cilantro, then it's the cob light that usually that's sufficient enough light for the cilantro. My other plants, when I'm doing plants in anticipation of a spring growing season, then I'll use that light. Now that's actually turned down. It's adjustable light, so I'll turn it up. So what you want to do then is I'm going to go grab some water here, and then you do not want to pour water on top of that when you're filling this bucket, because that's just going to push everything through, push a lot of your coconut coir through the net cup, and it's going to end up in the bottom of the bucket, which you don't want. So you're going to add water directly to the bucket, and you just have to slide it to the side, and I'll add it there. And with my bucket, I have it's actually a watering can, not a bucket. With my watering can, I do not add any of the chemicals into that can, because I also use that watering can for quick fills for my aquarium, so I don't want any mix up with the chemicals. So it's just the only thing that goes in there, and that watering can is for the aquarium side. I'll put chlorine remover, which that's not going to do any harm to my plants over here if I'm using that, and then that way I'm also not mixing and matching. I'm not mistakenly putting hydroponic solution in my aquarium, which could cause a whole lot of havoc. But I do want it in here. But what I do with that is I've got a little measuring shot glass, and then depending on how many gallons I put in there, then I'll just measure on that. So with your hydroponic solution, every solution is different. Mine usually calls for about 1 ounce per gallon, but other hydroponic solutions will have different mix rates. So just read the directions on those depending on which ones you want to get, and then fill it up that way. So I'm going to go grab my watering can here and start filling it up. So this is a 2-gallon bucket that I use. I'm going to have to do multiple trips. I need to be careful with it too, because I've got electrical equipment in here, and everybody knows water and electricity don't mix. So all I'm going to do is just add the water here to the side. Try not to make a mess. And with this initial run of water that I want to add, I want to make sure at least to the bottom of the net cup. It should be at least to the bottom. I'd probably say at least go a quarter of the way through, because that's going to help at least moisten up the coconut coir. Otherwise, once your roots start growing, they're not going to really have anything to sink into, and they won't grow very well. So you do need to moisten the coconut coir, and I will be adding more water, and then from there I'll be watering the top of that with a small watering can, just lightly watering it over there just to start wetting the top as well too. So I'm going to get some more water and be right back. On the initial pour, it was about 2 gallons. This is about another 2 gallons. I think should cover it. Probably hard to see with this too, but you can see the water. Not enough light here, but this water is at the bottom of the cup there, which I think is enough for now. So I'm just going to cover this up. So I put in about 4 gallons. I want to say 3.5 to 4 gallons. So, like I said, normally this general hydroponic solution is about 1 ounce per gallon. So I'm probably going to do it around 3 ounces. So I think I spoke incorrectly before. I might have been saying 1 ounce per gallon, but it's actually 1 teaspoon per gallon. So you can buy one of these handy shot glasses. I bought this from Hydroponic store. It measures by teaspoons, it's got tablespoon measurement, it's got milliliters, it's got ounces. So depending on what you need, it's got a measurement there. So this is about supposed to be 1 teaspoon per gallon. I did about 3.5 gallons. I'm probably just going to do slightly over 3, just to be safe to start. Like I said, once things start growing, I'll see how it works, if it needs more or needs less. So the hydroponic solution added, it's covered up, and then just gently water the top with this small watering can. That'll kind of help the surface get moist. You want those seeds to get moist, be in contact with the coconut coir, and that's how they're going to start germinating. So with that, I'm going to turn on the air pump, turn on the fan just so it has some circulation, and then I will be back and I'll check on it daily just to kind of see how it's progressing. But then when I come back for videos, it might be a couple days, a week or two, just so I can show the progress on that. This is day 12 here, and you can see the cilantro starting to pop out. I did have to lower the light over there just to bring it a little closer, add a little warmth to the growing medium. That might have helped it grow a little faster. Day 17 here, you can see quite a bit of strong growth. Some of the leaves are starting to come in. Still some seed shells covering that. And you can see how I was saying earlier, get a little white mold on that, on the cocoa coir substrate. Not harmful. So far I haven't added water. I did water a little bit on top, but I do need to add water today. And I will add water just to make sure it comes to the bottom of the net cup in there. And I'll open it up here too and give you a quick look at the roots as well. As you can see, the roots are starting to come out. The roots are touching the water there. Which is good. And I will need to raise the light up a little bit too as it grows. So with the water I'm not going to add any nutrients just yet to it. I still need to fine tune it, kind of observe how the plants are growing. So far they're growing fine, but they're still in their early phases. So as they kind of get bigger and grow taller, that's when I'll be able to better tell, and the nutrients will start to be used up and I can add a little more over time. So here we are at day 24, and while I would have liked to have it grow a little more before harvesting it, my wife needed some for some dish we were cooking. So she did harvest some. You can see on the left side over there. The plants are growing pretty well. And one thing I do with this too is I'll rotate this periodically just to kind of make sure that I did raise this up once, because as the plants are growing, and I do rotate it here and there just to make sure that it's not too much lean on one side or the other. I'm trying to get a little good look in there. You can see there's a lot more roots coming through, which is good. So that's all I have for this video. If you have any questions or any suggestions on how you would do it differently, feel free to leave it in the comments below. If there are certain herbs you prefer over cilantro, let me know. What kind of herbs do you use and how are you growing those? And if you could, please like and subscribe to the channel, and that would be great. Thank you.